Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the Center for States video series on the essential functions for monitoring, evaluating, and applying findings. This series is produced by the Capacity Building Center for States and funded by the Children's Bureau. The Monitoring, Evaluating, and Applying Findings brief is intended to help child welfare agency leaders, managers, and stakeholders take a structured approach to plan for and execute strategies to monitor and evaluate implementation efforts and interventions, strategies to collect and analyze data for a variety of evaluation types, and then use the data to make decisions and plan for sustainability of programs where feasible. It does this by providing step-by-step guidance to strategize and develop a plan for evaluation, collect and analyze data and consider fidelity and costs, and then use results to make decisions about ongoing efforts and sustainability. The Monitoring, Evaluating, and Applying Findings brief is broken down into 4 parts and 11 essential functions or tasks. It is important to remember that while the steps are presented in a linear way, in practice, often steps will overlap and be revisited as teams continue to monitor, evaluate, and apply their findings over time. Part 1 is setting the stage and includes considering the circumstances and needs of the agency, developing a logic model, identifying questions to explore, identifying the data measures, sources, and collection methods that will answer them, and then developing an evaluation plan. In this module, we begin Part 2 by discussing strategies to put the evaluation plan into place by collecting and analyzing the data outlined. And then our next 2 modules will outline 2 featured topics that are a version of data collection and analysis, examining fidelity and analyzing costs. Part 3 outlines how to use the data collected to make decisions and adjustments, with 2 functions on sharing findings and recommendations, and then making decisions to further spread, adjust, or discontinue. Then Part 4 is on sustainability planning, and how teams should refine and implement a plan to sustain interventions when this is the decision of the team and stakeholder groups. Let's get started. Why do teams collect and analyze data? Teams collect and analyze data to implement the processes and methods the team set out in their evaluation plan, to gather together the information and data needed to answer the questions of interest, and to determine the effect of the process or program being evaluated. How do teams collect and analyze data? An important part of monitoring and evaluation success is securing participation and enough response rates to be able to make decisions about the effectiveness. Teams need to clearly explain to participants why they are collecting data and how the findings will be used to improve services. Evaluation champions, for example, program managers with positive experiences using data, can help teams by communicating the value of good data to guide decision-making. If appropriate, teams may choose to encourage participation by offering incentives. And assuring anonymity and confidentiality can help participants feel more comfortable with responding openly, particularly in surveys and interviews. To collect, analyze, and interpret data, teams should develop protocols, distribute guidance, and conduct training on the data collection methods outlined in the plan as needed, and use the tools and procedures established to collect the data needed. Data analysis can be led by external evaluators, data analysts, or CQI specialists as appropriate. Analysis of quantitative data should help teams understand the number and characteristics of the services provided, identify patterns and relationships, highlight trends in outcomes, or present comparisons along with rigorous methods of analysis or statistical tests. Analysis of qualitative data may include identification of common themes to further explain patterns and trends. Data visualizations, such as charts and graphs, can help teams see the patterns, trends, and variations in the data. Interpreting data is at the core of the evaluation process. What do the patterns and findings mean? What lessons or conclusions are there for next steps that emerge? What can help teams to collect and analyze the data? Teams should consider some of the following questions as they collect and analyze the data during evaluation. To what extent do the data and analyses answer the evaluation questions? What do the numbers, patterns, or trends mean? What, if any, patterns are evident over time, across geographic locations, target populations, and/or participation levels? How can qualitative information, for example, the interviews from focus groups, help explain the pattern? Is there confidence in the data? Where are there gaps or limitations? And what else would be helpful to know? What additional analyses might be useful? Teams engaged in formative evaluations should consider the following questions in addition to their evaluation questions: to analyze and interpret the data collected, to think about the results in comparison to their expectations and theory of change. How has implementation unfolded? Has the intervention been implemented consistently and as intended? Is the intervention meeting initial expectations? Are staff and target population members satisfied with service delivery? What are the key successes and challenges? What do the data say about needs for adjusting the intervention or improving implementation processes? What are priority areas for moving forward? And how will teams continue to track progress over time? Teams engaged in summative evaluations should consider the following questions in addition to their evaluation questions: to analyze and interpret the data collected, to think about the results in comparison to their expectations and theory of change. What evidence is there that the intervention is effective? Is the intervention meeting the objectives and desired short-term and intermediate outcomes? Is there data to assess long-term outcomes? If not, do intermediate outcomes suggest that the intervention is making progress in the right direction? Are there differences in effectiveness under certain conditions, for different settings, or for particular populations? What do the findings suggest for spreading or scaling up the intervention? What can others in child welfare learn from the findings? Let's take a moment to check in on what you've learned about collecting and analyzing data. Why do teams collect and analyze data? To develop a plan to implement the process and methods outlined in their evaluation plan, to gather the information and data needed, and determine the effect of the process or program being evaluated. How do teams collect and analyze data? By building buy-in for data collection, encouraging participation, and then collecting the data, analyzing it, and interpreting it. What can help teams collect and analyze data? By considering as a team if the data answers their questions, discussing what the data patterns and trends indicate, reviewing confidence, and additional questions as needed. Now take this a step further by reviewing the reflection questions for collect and analyze data in your monitoring, evaluating, and applying findings workbook to connect what you've learned to your own experience. Up next is the first of the featured topics in data collection and analysis on fidelity assessment, the 8th module in this series.
This video was created by the Capacity Building Center for States, funded by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Children's Bureau, under contract HHS P2332014000033C. The content of this video does not necessarily reflect the official views of the Children's Bureau.